This is Top Landing Gear. We are on our first ever Top Landing Gear road trip. We've come to RAF Coningsby in Lincolnshire, home of the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight, and our host here for the day, we are so thrilled, is Flight Lieutenant Neil Farrell, better known as Faz. He is bomber leader on the beautiful Avro Lancaster, which we're just standing in front of now. Neil, best job in the RAF, would you
Absolutely,
say?
without a doubt. Pinch myself every time I come to Coningsby and know that I'm going to fly it.
Quite a responsibility.
Huge responsibility. It's got a massive following. Everyone loves it wherever it goes. It's not lost on you what the aircraft represents. It's exhilarating. It's a huge pat on the back professionally to be picked to fly it, but it's also terrifying as well. There's only one of these in the world, or in the RAF at least. There's one more in Canada, but this is the only one we've got. And it's a huge responsibility to take it out, show it off, and bring it back in one piece.
Yeah. Was it something you wanted to do from early days, or is it?
It's a funny question, that, Jim, because people have said to me, do you know what, Faz, I remember when you were this big, you said you wanted to fly it. I can't remember that, but I must have said it. But certainly when, as you know, I started my RAF career flying helicopters, so you're a long way from being selected to fly this with that skill set.
Yeah. As James has found out.
Absolutely.
A long way from being selected to fly anything with that skill set.
But I eventually made the cross to fixed wing, and then I had an in to fly heavier aircraft, and as soon as I got that nod that I was going to fly big airplanes, then this was definitely the goal.
Yeah. Wow. Fantastic.
So normal day job, when you're not here, would be flying?
I'm at RAF Waddington on the Boeing E-3 Sentry, which a lot of people know as the AWACS. So it's another ageing machine based on the Boeing 707, but it's the airborne early warning and control system that we have for the UK.
Yeah, that's got a funny thing called a nose wheel, hasn't it?
It has, you know. Good spotted. Yep, the Lancaster's completely the other way around.
Yeah. So what's the path you have to take? You say, right, I want to fly the Lancaster, you're accepted.
Yep.
What's the path from going from flying the AWACS to this?
There's some prerequisites to begin with. So a signal normally gets put out saying we need some new people. Headlines are you need at least 3,500 hours in the air, a captain on a frontline multi-engine aircraft, preferably a low-level background, preferably an instructor, but certainly that at some time you've been assessed as above average.
Right. Did you tick any of those boxes?
I got a good face for radio, so I said, you'll do, mate. You make your application. Similar to the Red Arrows in many ways, you get asked for an interview. There's a bit of a social as well. And then you're picked, or you're told, very sorry, try again next year. And here I am.
Wow. Fantastic. And in terms of the actual training?
Well, unfortunately, she's not here right now. But at the other end of the hangar, we've got a Douglas Dakota, which is what we call always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Very popular airplane too, but that's our training vehicle. So that's the first time, as you alluded to, that guys like me will have touched what we call a tail dragger, an aircraft with a tail wheel. So you'll do a few hours on that, end up going solo. You'll complete your first public display approval on the Dakota as a captain on that. And that's when the RAF top brass come down and you show off your skills to them, and we do as a team to prove that we're safe to go and show these aircraft off to the public. Ideally, somewhere through your first season, once you've got a certain amount of hours in that airplane and a certain amount of tailwheel landings, you're then eligible to start training in the Lancaster. Now you start off initially in the right-hand seat. And I think the right-hand seat is the best job in the RAF. Why, you might ask, is because you haven't got to land it. Okay? Tail draggers are quite difficult, particularly in crosswinds, and this lady, the Lancaster, is very difficult to taxi in a crosswind. It hasn't got a tail wheel pin like the Dakota, so it doesn't help you keep in a straight line.
Doesn't lock?
No, it doesn't lock. So you're forever putting in little bits of brake or asymmetric thrust.
What's the visibility like at the front when you're
actually
taxiing?
Very good.
It is good.
It's good. It's not like the fighters with a big nose in front of you. It's actually quite good up there. It's a nice big greenhouse, so that's got other problems in the summer as well when you strap in. But no, so you'll do a few hours in the right-hand seat as a co-pilot, build your experience. So you'll fly the Lancaster as a co-pilot and the Dakota as a captain, and then 2 or 3 seasons later, maybe you'll start the transfer to the left-hand seat as a Lancaster captain.
Wow.
And from then, pretty much on, you'll do all your public display approvals flying the Lancaster.
And how many captains are there on the flight?
We've got 2 at the moment.
Yeah.
We're both instructors, myself and Seb Davey. We're soon to get another guy, Paul Ernie Wise. He's a Dakota captain at the moment. He's had a bit of bad luck with the COVID season and what have you. We were hoping to make him a captain this year. It's going to be next year now, so we'll have 3 captains on the Lancaster, but we'll all be captains on the Dakota, and there'll be 5 of us that can fly the Dakota as well.
And Faz, how long is your tour on, if that's the right word, on the Lanc?
Ambiguous, that. If you think that all of the bomber crews, as we call ourselves, come from frontline squadrons, you've got a frontline day job as well, if you like. Some of us are at Bryce Norton, I'm at Waddington up the road. So it's a thing that we can do in our spare time or when our squadron can spare us.
I was going to ask, is there quite a lot of goodwill from your operational units?
Huge.
But also there's a bit of kudos for them?
There is as well, but the big pull is actually on your families as well. So there comes a time when that pull in all different directions is too much, and some people have just got to say, do you know what, I've got to put family first for a while now and give back some of my weekends in summer to the families. But yeah, it's worth every penny.
Do you feel a bit cheated this year, having not had...
Hugely.
Yeah.
Hugely cheated, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I just
But
ask you
just to finish off your question about tour length.
Yeah.
When we recruit guys, we normally ask for a minimum of 5 years return. You're not held to it. People realise that things go on in the real world in the Air Force that you may have to give up sooner. But certainly this is my 7th season, and I hope to do at least another 5.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
As a captain.
Absolutely.
It's not they don't just gradually push you off into the long grass.
Seb's a captain too. There may be days when I'm his co-pilot.
Sure.
It is what it is. You know, you share the love. It's a privilege to be here, so you can't get too precious about what seat you sit in.
No.
What about the guys who do go off back into normal frontline squadrons, having served on this BBMF for a while? Is there a sense of regret? Do they hate moving on, or are they actually quite looking forward to getting back to what they really joined up to do?
I personally can't face that. I really can't think of a day when I'm not doing this job.
Yeah.
I think it all depends on your personality. I think some guys, when they walk away from this, have to walk away from the Air Force and go and do things outside.
Gosh.
A couple of guys I know are still in, and it got to the stage where they'd just done enough weekends and thought, I've done it now, I've enjoyed it, let's walk away with a clean slate and an aircraft that's in one piece. And certainly I fly with a guy at RAF Waddington called Flight Lieutenant Loz Rushmere. He left as I joined, but I still fly the Sentry with him. He has no regrets. He had a good time, and it's a highlight of his career.
So as a pilot, compared to other aircraft, other particularly multi-engine aircraft, what is she like to fly, the Lancaster?
It's horrible to taxi. Once it's in the air, it's a dream. It's perfectly balanced. It's got bags of power. It's nice and smooth. It's very stable. So flying it is lovely. It really is nice. And it's nice having a 4-man flight deck, which is something I'm used to on Sentry.
Yeah.
I love the position of flight engineer. It's a dying trade, unfortunately, but it's nice that this is the only other aircraft we've got with that crew member on board.
Right. And to go to war in, can you imagine what that would have been compared to going to war in a modern...
Frightening. I think frightening, and I think we talk about that every time we get in it. So if you think of 8 or 9 hour sorties, you know it's not the most comfortable. The captain's chair is quite nice, but all the other crew positions aren't particularly palatial. But you're at night probably. Yeah. This is probably another 9 hour mission on the back of the one you did 2 days before. So fatigue is setting in, and what I think would be frightening is if you are on fire in a spin with all your parachute gear on. Your sheepskin leathers, keeping you warm. I don't know whether you've been in the back of our Lancaster, but there's no room. It's built around a bomb bay, and inside it's just functional space to get to the cockpit. It is not big, so trying to jump out of that whilst you're evading fighters and or on fire or in a spin must have been horrible.
That main spar is...
Yes, I've been lucky enough to actually walk inside this beautiful aeroplane, and yes, you get to the main wing spar. I mean, just walking through it like this,
it's an obstacle course.
It's very, very difficult.
Yeah, I mean the main spar is one of the obstacles to get to the flight deck. There's loads of other bits of clutter in the way. I mean, if you went into that back door now, which is the main way we go in, in about 10 feet or so, you can see the bomb bay doors open now. First of all, there's a big step up over that, because the whole aircraft, if you think about it, was built around the bomb bay. That's what it was there for, to deliver the payload. So, and then, yes, as you get further and further up, there's other bulkheads and main spars, and where the radio operator would sit, that's a big chunk of real estate that you've got to navigate around, and finally you make it to the cockpit. And that isn't as far as it goes either, because the bomb aimer's got to get under the co-pilot seat into the nose, so it's all ergonomically not particularly pleasant.
Would the bomb aimer also be the front gunner?
It would.
The job doubles up.
I think there were 7 members of the crew, and I think you could double up at the front as well.
Yeah. And a radio operator, do you still carry a radio operator?
No, we don't. No. We have a minimum of 4-man flight deck. Although there's 10 seating positions in the airplane, we have a minimum of 4 crew. 2 pilots, a navigator and a flight engineer. And the way we run the crew, how we work together, is the navigator does all the radios.
Okay, all right.
And navigation nowadays, have you updated, or are you still using clocks and compasses? And
we still go flying with a paper map.
Yeah.
I think I can't imagine anything more frightening than the iPad calling it a day as you're approaching the palace and you're trying to hit time on target to the second for Her Majesty and everything failing. So we still have the traditional methods.
Yeah.
But yes, we employ modern methods to help with the planning phase.
And is there
execution.
Any modern stuff hardwired into the aircraft, or is it just you use the add-ons?
We've kept all of them as authentic as we can.
Yeah.
But there are plug-in points for things like GPS in the Dakota.
Yeah.
I think there's one in the back for the Lancaster as well. But the cockpit fascia and all the old original dials and knobs and stuff is all there as it was. A lot of it is pretty much handheld that we take on.
Yeah.
So Faz, you said that flying this aircraft is a terrifying responsibility. So this may sound like a strange question, but what is the best part of this job? Is it the flying, the anticipation of the flying, the displays, or anything else?
It's a few things.
Yeah.
I think and this started for me on the Dakota, so when you finish your day out, I mean, we don't do just displays, we do fly past as well. And that can be a village fete, it can be an old people's home, it can be anything.
Oh, good. Could you do both? For me, quite soon.
You've got a few days till the end of November. Get a request in for next year, and we'll see what we can do. But we land, and we always phone up for a debrief to say any problems. You know, was it too noisy? Did we frighten anyone? Are there any complaints? And it's always elation from these people, and they're over the moon that you've bothered to come.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah.
no bother. You know, so there's that element of it. When we land, there's always a gathering at the fence there to say hello. It's amazing who tracks you on radar and knows what you're doing, who the crew are. Always nice meeting the public at air shows or the fence, or speaking to them on the phone after events. It's always nice to write Lancaster in your logbook. But what I think is the real joy is when we get to meet the veterans.
Yeah.
And for me, a personal highlight, a couple of years back, we flew Johnny Johnson in his bomb aimer's position in that machine down Lady Bower Reservoir in May, and it was.
How low were you?
500 feet.
500 feet, yes.
Yeah, that's the limit.
I see.
But that's quite
Some inside knowledge.
that's quite interesting as well, because back in the day when the boys used to practice over Lady Bower Reservoir at night, I don't know how they got that around the corner and down to 50 feet. Without skimming off the water a couple of times to line up with the towers, because there isn't a lot of room.
No.
Now, we haven't got the same G limits on this airplane as they had back then, and I dare say they didn't really care much about the G limits back then. We do, to preserve its life.
Yeah.
But even so, this is a very stable machine. Doesn't like turning corners or getting thrown down that well, but how they got it deep into that reservoir, lined up, straight, on speed, to practice, I don't know how they did it. I really don't.
Is it very manoeuvrable?
No.
No.
If you think about it, it's been designed to be a bomber,
Yeah.
therefore a stable platform to line up and deliver the weapon.
Right.
It's not a fighter, it's therefore not agile, it's the
No.
absolute opposite of what you want it to be.
Yeah.
So to get it to turn, it requires a big boot of rudder. And if you saw the formation we did this year, with the fighters all around us,
Yes.
whenever I was trying to keep behind the Hurricane,
Yeah.
tail end Charlie here, all he saw was my tail doing that as I moved left to right, as I put rudder in to try and turn to keep in position. So yeah, it does require a lot of rudder to turn.
Goodness me. Which way is the... are you using opposition rudder? Or if
Nope,
you go
turning,
left, you do a left
roll
rudder?
left, rudder left. Yeah.
It's incredible then to think that when during bombing raids, when they've got lit up by searchlights or evading enemy fighters, that they could spiral these things in the way
Corkscrew.
they did, corkscrewing
Corkscrew
them.
event. Yeah, I think there's certainly one story I've heard of where a crew has brought an aircraft back post a raid, and the captain's corkscrewed the airplane to evade a fighter, and they pulled so much G that they've actually twisted the tail. And when they've got back, they've landed, shattered, gone for debrief, gone to bed, woken up, CEO's office now, what have you done to my Lancaster? And it's twisted at the back. But, I think back in the day, it could take quite a bit of punishment.
Yeah. Wow.
But today, we wrap it in cotton wool.
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And that the cockpit position, just going back to, being in combat, you're very exposed, aren't you? There's an awful lot of glazing around
You are. I'll tell you what, when I did my first flight in the Lancaster, Jim will be aware of this, your first flight in any airplane is called a famil. And it gets the wow factor out of the way.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Even
when
in
you
the
go,
Wessex, kind of for me.
yeah, exactly, yeah. But it means that when you do your first instructional trip as a student on the airplane, the wow factor's gone. You can just pay attention. Okay, so my first, my famil was in the upper turret. As this aircraft did a fly past down south somewhere. Flight Lieutenant Tim Dunlop was flying it at the time, but you feel very exposed in that upper turret. Very, very exposed.
Yeah.
Up in the airflow, the whole airplane's beneath you.
Yes.
You can see all around it, and you are in that airflow,
Yeah.
ready to be picked off.
Did you just have a permanent grin on your face?
Yes, I did.
It doesn't come on.
Well, I've done this now. I'm bored. I want to go 30 feet up front
Yes.
and strap in, please.
Yeah.
And the setup on this Lancaster, you talked about you have a captain and a co-pilot. So there's the right-hand seat has the control yoke, doesn't it? Is that normal in
No, it's
Lancasters?
not actually.
No.
Yes, it's got the lazy boy seat, as we call it. We didn't have co-pilots in them during the day. So the co-pilot's duties today is movement of all the services, flaps, throttles. The gear is done by the engineer, actually. And the co-pilot in the right-hand seat does some route flying, as we call it, to venues, and does some fly-pasts. He won't do a display, and he won't land it from the right-hand seat because the seat isn't deemed sturdy enough. But back in the day, the flight engineer got from his panel, put the lazy boy seat in behind him, and did the throttles and flaps for the pilot. That's how that used to work. So it used to be a single pilot machine.
Any rudder pedals in the right-hand seat?
There are. There's a full controls. It's just not deemed sturdy enough to take a landing.
Okay.
So when you are learning to be a captain on the airplane, the first time you land it is the first time you're in the left-hand seat.
Yeah. So does that mean it's not authentic, or would Lancasters for training during the war have had that right?
To my knowledge, that's how it would have been.
It would have had that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Don't forget, they built over 7,700 of these
Yeah.
things. I dare say there's a little bit of latitude of it. It's a throwaway item. If you bend one, we've got 7,500 more. Yeah. But she's very precious to us, so this is the only one we've got. We'll look after it.
And just going back a couple of steps, what was your first landing in this like? You can be honest with us here amongst friends.
It was a peach. To be honest with you,
Well, it probably was.
You know what? The instruction was very good,
Yeah.
obviously. But it's a shame she's not here. But the Dakota's a terrific training vehicle for us. Sturdy, very robust. Like the Lancaster, quite simple in many ways compared with modern airplanes. But it's great for getting your eye in to the technique of tail dragger landings. And as soon as you learnt the numbers and got a bit of time practicing from the right-hand seat, just generally flying it and what it feels like, when you come to land it, you're ready for it.
Is it any way forgiving in landing, or is it still quite a...
No, not really, because if you think about how... I'm going to get a bit technical here on the mic, but if you think about the centre of gravity of the airplane, if you hit the runway hard, centre of gravity is behind the wheels, the tail comes down, which increases the angle of attack, up it goes. If you force the nose down, bang, and you're into that pilot-induced oscillation.
I wouldn't know what that's like at all.
No. So the technique really is get the speed right, and as soon as the wheels touch, just check forward to get rid of any angle of attack. That's the way to do it. But I wouldn't say it's particularly forgiving. No.
There was a nasty-looking landing at Biggin Hill many years ago, before your time.
Might have seen it on YouTube.
Yes, it's very much on YouTube. Where I think
we get cold sweats over things like that.
Yeah, it looks really nasty. Does the tail wheel come? Is it almost a three-pointer? I'm not quite sure what happens.
No, we don't land three-pointers.
No,
in
but
the
something
Lancaster.
It was
I
a
think it
nasty
might have been.
skip, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think. I don't know whether we.
And very
wasn't
well
there.
rescued.
It wasn't there.
Very
Don't know
well
what
rescued.
went wrong. I know,
No.
but let's just say these aircraft are not forgiving in crosswinds.
No.
So it might have been a bit of a strong gust caught him out that day.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But he did well to get it back.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
But it does just go to show, we're so used to seeing beautiful, smooth landings time after time. But that, if it does nothing else, illustrates actually the skill required to put these things down.
And also, if we don't turn up for an event, it's probably the weather.
Yeah.
We've said no because the wind, wherever we're trying to get the aircraft out of or back into, is out of our limits. And it's exactly that kind of event.
That's crosswind limits usually.
There's an ultimate limit of 25 knots for taxiing, but depending on how experienced you are on the airplane, you've either got a 10 or a 15 knot crosswind limit. That's
Yeah.
not a lot, but believe me, it's enough for this airplane.
We've all been at Dunsfold at Wings and Wheels, utterly disappointed when the BBMF hadn't turned up, and then the Vulcan's not turned up.
Yes,
We're all going slightly disgruntled, well, disappointed, kids in tears.
Not as much
Probably
as us.
as you. Exactly.
Is that right?
When you do a display with the other aircraft in the formation as well, do you have a preset display you'll do
We do.
every time?
It's part of our public display approval.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that we will show off to the one-star when it comes to two-star show when it comes to do our PDA.
Yeah.
It's a set format.
And is that weather dependent, or are you? Is it the
Always.
same?
There's
Do you have the same display? Or like the Reds have a rolling and a.
I get you.
Yeah.
The difference there is when we arrive as a 3-ship,
Yeah.
we'll have a set weather for that.
Yeah.
And then as we split up, the fighters, depending on what the cloud base is doing, will do a flat or a rolling display like the Reds.
Yeah.
But for us, it's for
it's
the
the
3-ship,
same.
there's another set of limits as well. So depending on what weather we've got, we'll try and do something. We'll try and turn up to begin with, and then we'll try and give you a full display.
Is this more susceptible to weather cancellations, if you like, than the Spits and the Hurricanes? Or are you all on the same? Would there be some displays they could do that you couldn't, based on weather?
Not in terms of crosswind. I think the baby Spitfire has got a 10-knot crosswind limit. Whoever's flying it, I think. Some of the other fighters have got up to 15, but that's all we've got in this. 15 knots of crosswind.
And I suppose this is the question that nobody wants to know the answer to, but how long can she keep flying for?
The senior brass, as we understand it, want to keep everything here going in perpetuity, which is why we work so hard to fly it in good weather, look after it, wrap it in cotton wool in terms of the G limits we put through it, and why very soon it's going to go down for some deep maintenance at Duxford at the end of November, and then we'll get it back sometime in the new year.
And unlike the Vulcan, I guess, which is subject to more stresses and strains and lost all its sort of engineering support, this can still be...
We're hoping to.
Yeah.
We're hoping to. In many ways, it's a beautiful airplane, ahead of its time for its day, I think, but actually quite a simple machine overall. The intent is to keep it going, without a doubt.
That's fantastic news.
It's obvious what the public get out of it.
Yep.
I mean, it's fantastic. How do the Air Force justify the continuance of BBMF?
I think you can't really put a price on the celebration that it brings. You know, we're here to celebrate, commemorate and inspire, and I don't think you can really put a price on that. I think when you turn up with this airplane at any air show or any marked anniversary or Queen's birthday fly past or anything like that, you can't put a price on that. I mean, this is the only one we've got, only other one in the world, and I've never known anyone complain about it, really.
Not even the accountants.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Would you be happy to see the East Kirkby Lanc Just Jane in the air?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that'd be wonderful. I think we could do a lot with that.
Yeah.
I think we could fly together around the UK. It wouldn't be better. It would just be different. There'd be two of us, you know, and we wish them all the luck in the world to get it flying again. It'd be lovely.
It's. I mean, it is on the cards. It's not a pipe dream, is it?
No,
It is,
absolutely.
It is going to happen.
They've got a plan, and I hope it works for them. I really do.
Yeah, I think
You'll be
we'll
fighting over spares.
I don't know about that. I don't know how the spares train works. I mean, I think a lot of things that, like I said, it's a very straightforward airplane. There's certainly enough in the system for Merlin engines and Griffin engines.
Yes.
You know, we've never had a problem with engines or engine parts.
No.
Any other parts for it, I think we can, I wouldn't say readily, but certainly there's a mechanism to get bits made should we need anything. So we've got one or two engineering things to worry about with it now, but it's just part of the normal engineering process for flying airplanes, let alone priceless warbirds.
Just going back to the display flying, is the Lancaster always the leader?
Yes.
Yeah.
For that standard 3-ship, as we call it, Lanc Hurry Spit display, yes, the Lancaster is Memorial 1.
Yeah. And because you've got 3 different types, okay, there are big similarities, I assume, between handling and performance of the Spit and the Hurricane, depending on which model of Spit.
Indeed.
So maybe I'm talking myself out my own question here.
Well, as a bomber pilot, I can't really talk on what a fighter pilot says.
That's true. But so you've got different types all in one formation.
Yes.
Does that add additional problems in trying to get everyone together? Do you see what I mean?
No, I don't think so, because, I mean, ultimately, as we walk out to the airplanes, if the Hurricane doesn't want to start, if we haven't got the other spare Hurricane, there's no reason why we can't take another Spitfire, and the formation will just work the same way.
Yeah.
You'll just have 2 Spitfires to show individually rather than a Hurricane and a Spitfire when it's because the formation splits up and does individual displays.
Yes, of course.
Or it can do a synchro tail chase.
Yes.
sort of display. But if there isn't a Hurricane, then it's just going to be 2 Spitfires or whatever. It doesn't change how we fly the display itself.
No. So all the moves during the display, whilst you're in that 3-ship formation, are called by you.
Yes. If you think about it, we're the slowest and most lumbering type up there, so it's easy for those agile fighters to stay with us. It's more difficult the other way around, as we found this year during the Trenchard display.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Dowding, my apologies, Dowding display.
The Dowding
I knew I'd get that wrong. Yeah. Well, it was my job to stay behind the Hurricane in Dowding, and it was quite hard work. It was hard work putting the inputs in to stay behind the Hurricane. Although the boss was flying it nice and smoothly, it is still a fighter which is agile, and that wants to stay in a straight line, nice and stable. So lots of rudder inputs to try and get it to turn, to stay behind it, lots of lag. Seb was working the throttles quite hard for me to keep right behind as I was doing the steering. It's a challenge.
Goodness.
But we got it done.
Have you ever seen it from the Spitfire? Have you sat in a 2-seater Spitfire or anything?
No, I haven't, no.
Jess has.
Have I mentioned
He's
that?
not mentioned it. That's amazing.
Well, I'll tell you about it over a beer, Faz.
Okay.
You will be amazed.
A few years ago, there was a 2-seat Spitfire at RAF Wellington, and I got my dad in that for his retirement, which was lovely.
Oh,
yeah,
fantastic.
that was nice to do.
How many?
Sorry, Roy.
How many hours have you done?
Gosh,
with Lancaster?
in the Lancaster, I've got about 160, I think.
Wow.
You need a few hundred more, don't you?
I
Before
do,
you think about calling it a
yeah,
day.
I'm not going anywhere for a while.
No.
No.
Faz, one thing, when we listened to the Reds, we're all very used to Red 1, calling his commands. And that. I'm very squeaky. Is it the same for you, or is it slightly more relaxed?
We take the
bit
mick out of the
squeaky.
fighter pilots when they do their synchro.
I was rather hoping you might say that.
statement.
Yeah.
We're a bit more gentlemanly, having a cup of tea about it.
Would you mind, possibly?
That's right, yeah. And you can pretty much read the mind of the bomber pilot when he's about to turn the thing, because it slowly rolls. But no, the fighter pilots do that, and we take the mickey out of it.
I'm very glad to hear that.
Behind
Neil,
the back, obviously.
Yeah.
Amongst all the traditions associated with this, there is a lovely tradition that you all have when you board the aircraft with that brass plaque on the side.
Yes, well, people talk about the few a lot, as in the fighter pilots in the Battle of Britain, and quite right too. But we like to remember the many of Bomber Command that didn't make it home. And if you think about the numbers, well over 50-odd thousand of Bomber Command never came home. That's more than's in the RAF today, which is astounding. So we've got this beautiful plaque that was put on the entrance to the Lancaster at the back, which is the main crew entrance, and it literally says, to remember the many. And every crew member and anyone else we take flying every time gives that little tap of appreciation as we climb in. So if you ever follow us on Twitter or whatever, I talked about the lovely people that watch us to go flying, and when we come back, a lot of them take pictures of us touching that as we get in. It's on Twitter later on that day.
Yeah.
So they're aware of what we do and why we do it.
Well, I'm a member of the BBMF. What's it called? The club.
Yep.
And on the last memorial mail out, there was a picture of your bum.
Oh, lovely.
Basically, as you walked in.
Thanks for
I
that.
sent it out to everybody. I said, no.
Neatly packed, wasn't
That's
it?
his bum.
Yeah.
As you were
Was
touching
a bomber
it.
bum or a fighter bum? And
Definitely, yeah. Thanks for that.
Felt for comfort, not speed. Yeah.
And Rob, you noticed inside, just looking, we actually walked over to the Lancaster now. Is that a toilet inside?
Inside on the left, that is the old chemical toilet that the boys would have used, yes.
Right.
We've kept the inside of the airplane as authentic as we can. So if you were to go in and walk up, you'll see all the control cables bare down the side of the airplane as it was back in the day. You've got you can just see there the ammo trays that feed the rear gunner. They go all the way to the back. We've got blank rounds in it now, but that's what it would have looked like back in the day. So yeah,
Amazing.
Toilets in there as well.
Have you ever used it?
No,
No.
it's not live today.
Okay.
It's the only thing that doesn't work.
We don't. Again, part of the preservation of the airplane is we don't put 8 hours of fuel in it.
Yeah.
That therefore reducing the all-up weight of it. So we tend not to go above 48,000 pounds all-up weight, whereas during the war it had been well into the 60,000 pound range. So we don't tend to stay able for more than about 3.5 hours. So I've got an AWACS bladder, so I'm good for that.
We've done a lot about this in the podcast recently, haven't we?
Yeah.
Talk.
Yeah.
Do you keep everything serviceable, like the bomb release mechanisms and the guns? Are they kept serviceable, or are they?
No, they're not. So we've got hydraulic pumps that service the flaps, the gear, the bomb bay doors, and that's all we use them for. So the hydraulic pumps would have done the release mechanisms, it would have done the turrets as well.
Yeah.
They're disconnected, so it's purely about the main
flying
services that we need.
aircraft,
Yeah. But the bomb bay doors come open as part of the display, and we open them as part of the shutdown sequence as well. So You can see the bomb bay, but no, the mechanism and the turrets are all disconnected.
Is this one configured for 1,000-pounders or?
I think it is actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of little calipers in there, which I can imagine would be for 1,000-pounders.
Is that called a 90-way, is it? Or is that a later thing?
Do you know what? You've got me there.
I think I might have read that in the Vulcan.
There's always someone that knows more than me.
We can edit that bit.
Yeah, okay. Well, I believe you've got your tour coming up around the hangar, and I can't emphasise enough that the volunteers that do the tours around the hangar are extremely knowledgeable volunteers. We're very lucky to have them. So you'll get a lot of, I wouldn't say useless facts, but facts that I don't know when you go around later. There's nothing
I'll
they
mention
don't
that you
know.
didn't know the answer to that.
And a lot more. I could tell you all about flying it, that's for sure.
What are your best and worst memories from the 160 hours you've done so far?
I don't have a worst memory, quite honestly.
You've never at one moment flying. I've just started flying, and pretty much all the time I think I'm going to break
It's the
it.
completely different end of that spectrum.
Okay. Yeah, true.
I think 6,000 hours later.
Okay.
And then you're into this. I think my first display at East Kirkby didn't go as I wanted it to. So we have limits on when we drop the gear and raise the gear in this airplane. We because of stresses on the airframe, we have to have the wings level before we raise and lower the gear.
Yeah.
And I was rolling as I called for the gear to come up. So that required a bit of engineering input.
Right.
A bit embarrassing for me.
Okay.
But she was fine, but we had to go through that process. So I think that's probably my worst experience.
That's the worst thing you've done in an aircraft. I've been pretty happy with that.
Well, on this aircraft. On this aircraft. We won't talk about helicopters, and we certainly won't talk about AWACS, all right? I'm joking. But best memory, I think, without a doubt, is flying Johnny Johnson. We got him in here on a very cold morning in May, a couple of years back. Got a cherry picker, raised him into the bomb bay where he served during the war. Took off and flew down Lady Barrow Reservoir
In the bomb aimers.
in his old position.
Yeah.
And I got him to sign my logbook when I landed. I had peace of mind to take that with me, and I'll treasure that forever.
Yeah.
Like I say, it's about meeting the veterans.
Yeah. And what about flying down the Mall and those kind of fly paths? What is going on in your... I guess the concentration levels are huge, just keeping on time.
What's going on in my head is what you were going to say. Yes. Don't get this wrong. Don't get this wrong. Don't be late. But the navigators play a huge part in this airplane, and the Dakota. We're very lucky to have that brevet on board. They do a lot of the unsung work. They'll do all the planning during the week. And if you think that on a Saturday, for example, or a Sunday, we could have a dozen to 15 fly-past events with maybe a couple of displays in the middle. So they'll choreograph that. They'll do all the planning during the week. They'll liaise with all the event organisers, and they'll have that plan ready for us on a Saturday, and we'll have a plan to meet the fighters for the displays, and we'll all split off again and go and do our bits and pieces. So we're very lucky to have that lot on board. But they do a lot of the hard work in terms of being in the right place at the right time, and that time on target is down to them, and they nail it every time.
In terms of that planning that you're talking about, obviously the displays are booked a year in advance.
Yes.
Effectively. So on that day you'll have, say, 9 displays or 9 fly-pasts and 2 displays or something. Is that handed to the nav and say those are the rough times, sort it out, or
Well,
is he given the times?
The process is that if you wanted an event next year, you'd make a request.
Yep.
You tell us the date, the venue, and the time bracket when you're available that day. When you'd like us within whatever time your event is open.
Yeah.
It gets put through the events team. They sanction it. It comes to BBMF. Flight Lieutenant Andy Priest, the ops officer, will put a rough program together and allocate which assets are going to which fly-past events. And then the detail, the minutiae, will come down to the navigator, really, about ringing the events and saying, I know you want us between 3 and 6.
Yeah.
Can we make it 4:43 because we've got an event down the road at 4:15 or whatever, and that's how it will kind of work.
And that's gone. It's gone.
How do you navigate?
How do you navigate? You never found that out.
And 443 applies to what? What's the ground point that you're aiming for at 443?
Whatever the datum is that they
It's the
give us
data.
for
I mean, it's that
the
specific.
event. We try to be. Yeah, we try to be as specific as possible, otherwise you'll just be late and embarrassed. And no one likes that.
No, quite.
Going back to the question I just forgot, do BBMF charge for displays, or is it how
Displays, I think there is some remuneration, but that's not something I deal with directly.
Yeah.
But fly past is certainly part
So
of what
if
we
someone
do.
out there wanted to book the BBMF for their particular event, They put a request in.
Yep.
But is there a cost involved in that?
I couldn't tell you what the cost is if there is one, but certainly if you go to the BBMF website, you'll find all the details on there that you'll need to request us, and whatever administration fee might be applied. I really couldn't comment on what it is.
And if it's flying over the house of someone you once flew with, who gave you a flight in a Wessex,
Well, the rules are...
or Puma?
Mate, a Puma.
Puma.
I was a Wessex pilot, but he took me out in the Puma that day.
Yeah.
The rules are it's got to be an event that's open to the public.
Right, well, we'll invite some friends.
It can't be weddings and that sort of thing. It's got to be a public event that people come to see.
Yeah. Okay.
The first Top Landing Gear air show.
Yes, exactly. To our own air
Got
show.
an event next year. Put a request in, fellas, and we'll,
Hey,
Oh,
we
we
were
might
talking
have to.
before we were recording about getting a flight on this, and it's rarer than a Willy Wonka's golden ticket.
It is, and I think with good reason. I think so, because it's everybody would understandably love to fly this beautiful airplane, and I'm lucky that I have done, and I've done many times. So you could say it's easy for me to say this, but if you think about it, first of all, there are rules of who goes on the airplane during displays, and that's what people come to see with this airplane in display. So you can't fly in it if we're doing a display. That's the first reason why we don't take passengers on that. But also, if we did say yes to one person, and it opens the door for hundreds of thousands of others, and although we'd love to take them all flying, we just can't. So unfortunately, the permissions to go in this airplane rest with a much higher authority than us here. And understandably, otherwise we'd just be batting off all three services.
Are the top brass fans of Scouting for Girls, the highly successful indie pop band?
I believe everyone is a fan.
That might help. It might help. Neil, I always boast about this to the chaps, bored to tears with it, but I used to work at the BBC. I worked on the air shows, and for the 50th birthday of this beautiful aeroplane, I actually drove up here with a birthday cake.
Lovely.
From the BBC to PA474, happy birthday. And, we did a little film about it. And I remember at the time, and I was shown around inside, which was just amazing. But it was even more difficult moving around inside at the time because they were just kitting it out. They were trying out this experiment of blowing poppies out of the bomb bay, which was, they got it to work. I can't remember what the actual event was, but it's something over the Mall, and it looked absolutely stunning. Is that something that has continued, or
no? Sadly not. If you look on the nose of our girl, you'll see a few poppies to commemorate the poppy events that we did manage. It was before my time on the flight. It's something I'd like to start doing again, but I believe there was an incident with the poppies at one point where they all clumped together.
We don't hear that line very often.
No. So I think someone thought, you know what, for now, let's just scratch our heads about this, because we'd hate a big clump like that to hit someone. So for now, we don't do it anymore, but it'd be nice to see it back again.
Oh, it was a beautiful effect. I mean, that was one of the most stirring things.
Yes,
I think
I remember
I've seen.
watching it from outside the flight, thinking that's wonderful.
Yeah.
But we still show her off in other ways.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Right, should we go up then? Should we go up there?
I'm ready. I just need an engineer.
Yeah.
Faz, thank you so much. We are so envious of you. I think we've all turned a little shade of green.
My pleasure. I've enjoyed talking to you very much. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Faz.
Thanks, gents.
This is Top Landing Gear.